And Wall Street is notorious for doing this. They will sell their customers any shit that the customers want to buy. And they wanted to buy Bitcoin, and so they're selling it to them. But that's the only reason that these guys are recommending it, because now they have an ETF to make easy money managing it. But the key is you've had all this money flow into these ETFs that went into the spot market and bought a bunch of Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin didn't go up. So what does that mean? That means that there was another big pack of money that wanted to get out of Bitcoin, that sold the Bitcoin to the ETFs. So I think the smart money wasn't the mom and pop who bought a Bitcoin ETF on their Robinhood app. I don't think that's the smart money. I think the smart money are the people who sold their Bitcoin to that ETF. As they're trying to get all the other suckers to hodl with their diamond hands, they were selling their Bitcoin and cashing out. And what I think is the big risk to Bitcoin now is the ETF coin. I think at some point, we haven't seen it yet, but at some point you're going to see a huge exodus of frustrated Bitcoin speculators who want to get out. And I think the market's going to implode. I think you're going to see like the biggest crash we've ever seen in Bitcoin, because I don't know how the ETFs are going to get out. Because in the past, when there's been a big drop in Bitcoin, Tether comes to the rescue. All of a sudden, there's Tether's around to buy Bitcoin. Well, when the ETFs start to sell, the Tethers don't count. You can't buy with Tether because they can't put Tether in somebody's brokerage account. So when everybody just says, "Get me out of my Bitcoin ETF at the market today," now all these ETFs have to dump their Bitcoin onto the market, no limit. I'm just dumping at the market, right? You have all this mass selling, millions of Bitcoin dumped onto the market, and they have to be bought that day, right? Somebody has to buy, and nobody can buy with Tether. They have to be actual dollars that are going to get wired in to the brokerage account. I just think it's going to be a bottomless pit. Now, maybe they'll just halt all trading in Bitcoin ETFs. Maybe that's what they'll have to do. They'll have to halt liquidations. They'll have to get the NYSE to just stop trading, because we physically can't sell these Bitcoin because there's no market for them. So yeah, this is going to happen. The only question is when. What's going to set it off? But it's coming. And there's, nobody could have seen this coming, right? Who could have imagined this? Yeah, it's obvious, right? I'm telling you exactly what's going to happen with these ETFs. So when it does happen, you'll know that it wasn't like nobody could have predicted it.
Is there a time frame?
It's obvious. Well, no, I don't know when I'm not that smart. I know that it's going to happen. I'm not smart enough to tell you exactly when. No. Nobody's that smart. But anyway, do we have
next question we try on turn?
I could probably go to about 6:30, then I gotta go run for dinner. So that's like another half hour. Who's up next? Hello?
On turn, are you there?
Hello? Anybody there? I hear some people moving around.
Peter, can you hear me?
Hello?
Josh, how about you?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Who's that? Can you hear me? Who's on top?
Yeah, it's me. Okay, I just want to make sure Peter can hear me before I ask the question.
Yeah, we just had a pop in the number of listeners too. We're almost up to.
Yeah, there's no more technical difficulties. All right, well, Peter, I've been listening to you for a couple of years now. Giant fan. My investment strategy is based on what you say. I listen to everything you say. But here's one question I got for you. So I get your point about betting on the Fed lowering rates because it's politically convenient and no one wants to be responsible for a recession, even if it's the cure. But do you consider the possibility that the Fed might someday do the right thing and allow rates they ever did the financially responsible, or sorry, the fiscally responsible thing, wouldn't it just screw up your investment strategy?
Well, no, I mean, because if they do the right thing, there's no way they're going to do the right thing without a weaker dollar or a higher gold price. So I think I still make money if they do the right thing. And if they do the right thing, they're going to prick bubbles in a lot of assets I don't own. So I think I still make money if the Fed does the right thing. I just make even more money if they do the wrong thing. Now, that said, I would rather the government do the right thing. I would rather make less money, but have the government do the right thing for the country. For my kids, I care more about the country than about my wealth. But, that expression, don't fight the Fed. I think the Fed's going to do the wrong thing, and so that's how I'm going to invest. Now, they have inflated a lot of bubbles, and I could have gone along for the wrong thing, and I generally didn't do it because I was always afraid that I wouldn't get out in time. And it's easy to invest in a bubble if you don't know it's a bubble. It's a lot harder to do it knowing what it is. But yeah, I mean, the only precedent there is for the government doing the right thing is when they've exhausted all the other options, and they're in a major crisis. And then they'll maybe do the right thing. Now maybe they won't, even under those circumstances. But generally, that's the only time that politicians will do the right thing, when they're screwed either way, right? Because things are so bad. Look, you got Milei elected in Argentina, and it's not like he was there. He wasn't, he got elected to do the right thing, but only because, the public was so fed up with politicians promising government solutions to problems that kept getting worse. And they were so bad that the population was ready for something different. We're not at that point, or even close to that point, in the United States. And that's pretty obvious from both of the political campaigns that are being waged right now. And from what the Fed is doing. So, but yes, it is possible when inflation really starts to go up, that the Fed will say, to hell with the economy and the banking sector and government finances. We're not going to let the dollar completely implode. We're not going to allow hyperinflation. We're going to let rates go up. And maybe they have to go 20% or maybe 30%. I don't know where they're going to go. They went to 20% under Volcker. They may have to go much higher this time. But that means that means massive losses on Wall Street and Main Street. I mean, that means not only do banks fail like they did in 2008, but there are no bailouts, and the depositors lose their money. Now, they may not lose all their money, but people that have money at Wells Fargo and Bank of America, they're not going to get all their money back. They're going to get a portion of their money back, but they're going to lose a lot of their money. Now, will the governments allow that? Will the politicians allow voters to lose money in their bank accounts? I don't know, right? The alternative is they bail out the banks and then nobody loses their money, but their money loses almost all of its value, right? That's where you get the hyperinflation, right? Okay, yeah, you didn't lose any of your money. Your $1 million is still at the bank, but it was $1 million Uber ride to get to the bank, right? To get your $1 million, whatever. So, but those are the difficult choices. But I keep betting that the government and the Fed is unfortunately part of the government, it's not supposed to be, that they will always do what's better politics, what's in their interest, in the now, in the moment they make a decision is based on what's best for them politically. And that's always the worst thing economically.
Right, so
Because doing the right some short-term sacrifice that politicians don't want any part of. Because it's not in their interest, because they could lose their job, and so that's their primary concern.
Right. So,
And they're,
sorry, my bad. I keep thinking you're done speaking. But so, like in some fantasy dream world scenario where there was some libertarian who became Fed chair, something like that, and they actually did do the right thing, or like you suspected, like damn, like maybe the Fed's actually going to do the right thing. Would you tell everyone like sell your gold? They're actually going to do the right thing now, or is it just like keep gold no matter what? You know what I mean?
Well, I wouldn't have to. If they do the right thing, I wouldn't have to tell them to sell their gold. We'd basically end up on a gold standard. But if they do the right thing, hold on, just texting. Then I would be able to change my investment strategy. So let's say they do the right thing. If they do the right thing, a lot of quality U.S. stocks are going to be incredibly inexpensive. Now, a lot of U.S. companies are going to go bankrupt, but a lot of companies won't, but their stocks will be very cheap. I'd be happy to buy them. I'd be happy to change my investment strategy if the U.S. did the right thing, and as a result of doing the right thing, U.S. stocks were very, very cheap, and I was able to buy them. So yeah, I mean, I would love to reorient my investment strategy following a major economic collapse that was precipitated by the Fed doing the right thing and the U.S. government doing the right thing. Because I would also know that there was light at the end of the tunnel, right? And there literally would be. There'd be blood in the streets. To do the right thing at this point, is blood in the streets, and that's when you want to buy, right? And a lot of people aren't going to have money to buy. They're going to be broke. But if I'm right, by the time they do the right thing, gold will be much, much higher, the dollar will be much lower, and I'll be a lot richer. And so I'll have a lot of dry powder. I'll have a lot of buying power to be able to buy assets when few people have the money to buy them. And there'll be a lot of people that are selling because they need to sell. But we're nowhere near that. We haven't done anything right. Everything we've done has been wrong. Because it's the same playbook. It's the same Keynesian bullshit playbook that the bankers and the politicians have been using. And nobody admits that it's wrong. Nobody blames the Fed for the 2008 financial crisis. They all credit the Fed for saving the day. So they don't get it.
Peter, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so first and foremost, thank you so much for taking my question. I've been a follower for the past 10 years, and I've learned so much from you, and I just wanted to extend my sincere gratitude. So thank you so much. And the reason why I interrupted you right at that moment is because I think it's a great lead-in for my question. Because one of the things that I've been struggling with as I've been on this journey with you for the past 10 years listening to your podcast is determining how much of this is deliberate versus how much of this is actually sheer incompetence. When you take into consideration the amount of corruption that has taken place from 2020 with COVID, with Mark Zuckerberg coming out and admitting the suppression of information, the recalculation of inflation, the redefining economic terms, like how much of this is actually deliberate versus how much is actually pure incompetence? Because I think sometimes, like when I'm listening to you, I say to myself, how can it be so stupid?
Yeah, I ask myself that often, and I don't really know. And I say this too a lot about the Fed. Are they lying or are they really this, dumb, right? I mean, which is it? And again, and it's not, when I talk about dumb, it's not like, obviously these guys are intelligent. If you gave them an IQ test, they're probably pretty smart. A lot of these guys probably have a higher IQ than I do. So they're not dumb in the sense that they lack intelligence, but they believe a lot of things that are dumb. Now, either they believe these dumb things despite the fact that they're smart, or they're just lying, right? And they're telling us the truth. It's easier to spoon feed us a lie, right, than to tell us the truth. I don't know. I mean, you have to be able to have a conversation. You know, I had a conversation with Ben Bernanke one time at a cocktail party because we were both at an event, and I was like, all right, let me just have like a candid conversation with this guy. And I know he's supposed to be super smart, like he went to all these schools that I didn't even get accepted to, you know, and he probably had much better, you know, SATs than I did, so he's a smart guy. But when I talked to him, you know, I didn't get the impression that he had any idea that he was responsible for a lot of the problem, or that the Fed was responsible. I mean, I came away from that conversation thinking, you know, the guy actually believes this nonsense. I mean, you know, and maybe he was just a good liar to me, but based on the conversation, I mean, he was that incompetent. He wasn't, you know, deliberately doing the wrong thing. He thought he was doing the right thing, and just had no clue. That was my take from my discussion with him. But like Alan Greenspan, I mean, I've never had a discussion with Alan Greenspan, other than the fact that I did exchange correspondences with him when I was just out of college in the early 1980s, like 1987. I wrote a couple of letters and he answered me. But I always thought that Greenspan knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he did it anyway, you know. Because I thought Greenspan, you know, really understood economics, probably the most of any Fed chairman, including Volcker, who was before him. I think he had a better understanding of economics and money and gold. Yet despite all that, he basically was the architect of the housing bubble. And he was more responsible for the financial crisis than any one individual. So, but I think he knew better, and he did it anyway. But I don't think most of the guys that have followed him that know what Greenspan did. I think they're just, a lot of them are just incompetent. But again, some of them, their goal was just to keep the whole thing from imploding. That's their short-term goal. How do we stop this house of cards from imploding? And doing the right thing is not how to stop it. That accelerates it. And so they're just trying to keep it going for as long as they can. That's their goal.
Hey, line 9, are you there? You're next.
Anybody?
Hey Peter, I had a question for you about gold. Yeah, this is a line I hear. I tend to follow the COTs every once in a while, and gold, the thing is starting to get pretty significant. I think it's about 300,000 contracts long between managed money and other reportables. In the gold market, you know, who are the participants? And especially around when they start cutting rates, you know, and do you think that, you know, positioning here is appropriate? And who's right? Is it the physical side, or is it the funds and, you know, the prop shops?
Well, I mean, I think whoever's buying gold is right. Because I think that the only real direction gold has is up. You know, and a lot of people thought, well, you know, didn't the markets price in the rate cut? I mean, why should gold go up? Because we all knew that, you know, the rate cuts were coming. And that's true. We knew the rate cuts were coming. But we also know that more rate cuts are coming too. I mean, they're all in the pipeline. But not only are more rate cuts coming, but inflation is going to rise. And so that means that real interest rates are going to fall even more than the nominal decline. And all of that is super bullish for gold. So, I mean, I think this is the end game. I don't know how far into the end game we are, but this is the unraveling of this dollar system. And, it's again, when they write the history book about the dollar and its demise, one of the things that will be hard for people to believe was that, we accelerated it ourselves with the sanctions, the Biden sanctions against Russia accelerated the process. That it should have already been happening anyway, but it just was shows you. You think do these guys really get it? Well, if they got it, they wouldn't have done this, right? If the Biden administration or anybody advising him really understood the degree to which we depend on the dollar's reserve status, they never would have done what they did to Putin, because they just shined a big light on the risks that a country assumes by holding dollars, and how they put themselves in a vulnerable position where they can be punished if they do something that the United States doesn't like. And once they did that, they really created yet another incentive to divest of dollars, when that's the worst thing that could possibly happen if your goal is to keep the bubble going for as long as possible and delay the day of reckoning. You got to keep this dollar system going as long as possible. And you don't do that by punishing the people who are cooperating with you and who are holding on to dollars, right? That's the last thing you want to do. And when we did it, and it either shows you how arrogant we are, or how ignorant we are, or a combination of both that we did that.
Okay, the Highway Blues.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, Peter. My name is Damien. I'm in the trucking industry. I'm a truck, being a fan of yours and the Austrian for quite some time, and man, it's been a very painful experience to get to that knowledge. And my question is going to be in a framework of private property, price theory, and the Austrian business cycle. In relationship to the, I don't know if you just in case, the 1980 Motor Carrier Act, when they established that the freight brokers, are gonna be put in place to negotiate prices with shippers and manufacturers and cut out the carriers. And when I compare it to those principles, it's clearly that it's fascism, that it's corporatism. And my question is, if you think those people are possessed by the Keynesian, that the government is giving money, more special interest to universities to teach Keynesian, and they are possessed ideologically, or it's just pure Machiavellism?
Well, everybody has pretty much been a Keynesian. Ever since, I think, the Great Depression turned people into Keynesians. With the New Deal. But Keynesian economics, which is all a bunch of nonsense, but it's exactly what politicians want, because it creates government as the solution, because it focuses on demand, spending, and it says the way you help an economy is to stimulate demand, which is nonsense. But the government likes to stimulate demand, because that's how they also get votes. They stimulate votes by giving people money to spend, right? And so Keynesian economics has been a great tool for politicians to get reelected, but it hasn't been a great tool for the country, because it's caused a lot of problems. But academics, that's what they believe. That's what all the people who teach economics, they teach this nonsense. They believe this nonsense. And if you don't believe this nonsense, you're not going to get hired as a professor at a university. And if you don't believe this nonsense, you're not going to be appointed an economist at the government, at the Federal Reserve, or at the White House. So it's like everybody who reaches a high level in the profession of economics, right? Who are the top economists? They're the ones who are professors at the top universities. They are working for government. They get hired as an economist for the major banks, the Goldman Sachs, the Morgan Stanleys. They only hire the complete idiots, right? You have to believe this nonsense to get one of these jobs. So there are actually good economists, but they don't rise high in the profession, because they're not the ones that are going to get appointed. Because they're not even there to
negotiating the price, and you know you don't got a third party like a broker. You know, I can understand brokers connecting people and getting a percentage, no problem with that. But when you put a middleman that is completely taking over my property, you know, my property rights, it is not taking account my P&L statements. So they negotiate for me without even caring shit about my expenses. So yeah, when I see that, I see trucking as the stupidest business ever, and it seems like they're just taking it and doing it on purpose. So just to create and to bring more cheap labor. So I you know, that's my
Well,
thing.
the best thing that we can have is the free market, where you don't have the government imposing all sorts of rules and regulations that undermine the free market, that undermine choice, that undermine competitiveness. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no rule of law. Yes, there's a rule of law, and there are rules that we abide by. But most of the regulations are the government micromanaging the businesses and trying to eliminate choices by saying, oh, the consumer is too dumb to make a decision on his own. And so we need to protect the consumer from his own stupidity by requiring all this stuff. Workers are too dumb to not get exploited. And so we need to have all these rules to protect the dumb worker from being exploited and to protect the dumb consumer from being ripped off. But what happens is the rules and regulations that government creates ends up ripping off the workers, ripping off the consumers. And the irony of it is the government thinks that we're all too stupid to shop around for a good deal on a product or to shop around for a good job. We're all a bunch of idiots that need to be protected by the government. But we're all smart enough to vote, right? Yeah, we can. Anybody else?
You're up.
I know we've got about 12 people still looking to ask questions.
Or Mila Master. How about you?
Ajinka, is that you? No, now you're muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi.
Yep.
Firstly, I just wanted to say that I really love your podcast, and I want to thank you for all the valuable lessons that you've taught me. Now, my question is, buying gold mining stocks as leverage plays on the price of gold relies on precisely the price of gold increasing more rapidly than the fixed costs of those companies. However, some of these fixed costs are also likely to increase with inflation. So how can we be sure that the price of gold will increase faster than the fixed costs of gold mining companies?
Well, you can't be sure, right? I mean, there's risk, right? That may not happen. But I think that as the world, as investors come to terms with the reality that they've been oblivious to and lose confidence in the Fed and other central banks, you're going to see a rush into gold, right? We haven't seen that yet because, as I said, the public is still selling. We've had net outflows out of ETFs this year. Institutions are not buying. The pension funds, the endowments, the hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds. You don't have much interest, investor interest in gold yet. But when that happens, and it's long overdue, and now you have a lot of money that's trying to get into a small, pool. Gold is only, the total market cap of gold is about 17 trillion. I mean, you've got U.S. companies that are worth 1 or 2 trillion, just individual companies. So, you take the Magnificent Seven stocks, all of them together could have about the same value as all the gold in the world, just those 7 stocks, right? So, if you get a big influx into gold, physical gold, the price has to go way up. Even more so, all the gold mining stocks in the world, the combined market cap isn't even close.